We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is Wednesday. We're midway through the week. Got plenty of happening, plenty of things to talk about. Now, yesterday we had two podcasts. We had Lisa as the first podcast. She was with me talking about the court cases the day before. And then I did one with Ed too, and we kind of talked about similar things, but in a different way. Now, there's going to be two podcasts today. There's going to be this one, and then later on, there's going to be one I did with a gentleman by the name of Mike Singleton. That's a different kind of show. It's going to be one of the extra shows. Mike is a listener of the podcast and of the TikToks, and he's of a like mind. He's also a musician, filmmaker. He's an interesting guy. He's done a lot of stuff. So our conversation goes off on different tangents that aren't always about politics, but I think you'll find him interesting. And we'll talk politics on this particular podcast. So we got you covered both ways. Didn't do a lot yesterday, just kind of laid low. I did go to my grandnephew's football game. He's like 11. I love watching kids playing sports, especially football, but it gives me a weird feeling. When I go watch the first football game of the season, it reminds me of a Sunday. You know, back in those days when I was working, I had to get up on Monday mornings and go into work. Sundays were always great days, but something always hung over your head because you knew what was coming next. And the same can be said about football. We know that I know that I love football. I love going to watch it with the kids especially. But I also know that means, in not that too distant a future, shit's going to start getting cold. Now, we will go through fall here, and fall in Minnesota is wonderful. I will tell you, we're going to take a different trip. Every year, my wife and I would go up to a place called Bayfield in Wisconsin, which is a very beautiful place to go. It's right on Lake Superior in the fall. The colors are beautiful, and our anniversary is in October. So we took our honeymoon up there, and we would go there every year. Now, last year we did something different. We went to New Hampshire, and that was great. This October, we're going to go to Portland, Maine. My wife has always wanted to go to Maine, and as far as I'm concerned, sounds like a cool enough idea. I will tell you too, midway through September, my wife and I are going to go back to Savannah, Georgia, too, on the 17th to the 21st. So you got my itinerary all figured out. We'll figure it out. We'll get the shows done, and we'll keep it going here. Let's start out with a couple of emails. The first one comes from Old Soul. We love her emails. Says, "Hey, Boomer. Oh, my God. Gigi is so sweet. She doesn't have to send me anything. I'll leave my information down below if you'd like to pass along, but please be sure to let her know it's not necessary. I'm just glad to be part of the Boomer community. If I say anything that helps anyone in any way, it's a bonus. I love the check out my buddy ad video today. I'm always amazed at what less than 2 minutes of a video can do. The impact it can have and the thoughts it can provoke." I need to say something too regarding Gigi. Now, in the last show, Gigi said that she would like to send out one of her care packages. She started out by wanting to send one to me, and finally I got a P.O. box, and she sent it to me, and my goodness, it was wonderful. I was amazed, I was impressed, and I was appreciative of her sending that to me. And Gigi, again, I'll say thank you for that. And then in the last podcast, she had written me an email saying she wanted to send one to Old Soul. And I said, well, I'll get her address if she feels comfortable about it, and then I'll pass it on to you. So clearly, Old Soul is cool with it. Gigi, I will send you her address. Just reach out to me on the DMs or an email, and I'll get it to you. So that's cool. Anyway, Old Soul goes on to say, Trump has been having a toddler tornado size tantrum all day. And I think I know what his problem is. Well, one of his problems. He never shuts up. Not just his mouth, but his mind. Any thought that pops in his head, he's regurgitating it in a post or in one of those bizarre videos he makes from Mar-a-Lago. He simply does not think. I'm not sure if he's ever just sat down and had a single private thought. Perhaps if he did, he could feel something that would inspire him to put meaning behind the words he says. He'd never understand how a less than 2-minute video did more good for the country than any of his speeches he's ever given during his many hours of interviews or rallies. Look at all the time he's wasted talking and not saying anything versus a less than 2-minute video that made others rethink their language and thought process. We need a leader who understands words have power, not long, meaningless posts and videos. The fact that he'll never comprehend this is part of the reason he was never fit to be our American president, and the reason he should never hold that title again. If Lisa is free Friday, I'd love to do a live with you guys. If she's not free, I'm sure we can work something out. I'm on Pacific time, so whatever works for you, you too. I'm game. Thanks, Boomer, Old Soul. I just need to clarify this, Old Soul. You said you want to do a live. You want to do a live on YouTube? You want to do a live on TikTok? Or did you mean the podcast? Because the podcast isn't a live. So please clarify that for me so I know what to expect. And Lisa's game all the time. I don't think she'll have a problem if she's available. And again, Gigi, I will get you Old Soul's address. Just reach out to me and I'll send it off to you. All right. The next one says, hi, Mike Dash from Ontario, Canada. I've been listening to your podcast for most of this year now. I have a question. Do all the former presidents travel in motorcades or is it just Diaper Don? Dash. Well, they all have protection. They all have Secret Service, but 40-car processions? No. This is all about Don trying to create a perception that he's special. He's bigger than anybody else. It is unusual for a former president to travel like Donald Trump. And just to go back to Old Soul, she made a point about how Donnie speaks and doesn't think. And I've said this all along, people have always tried to give him credit for being smart or playing 3D chess or whatever. But if you really pay attention to the way he talks, you understand very quickly that he does not think before he talks. He reacts. It's all emotional, as I've said before. And if you say something to him, he just opens his mouth and whatever comes out is what he's saying. And then he doubles down on whatever it is said, even if it's all bullshit. Yeah, Donald Trump is not a bright man. He's not an articulate man. And he doesn't think about the things he says. And that might explain why he always finds himself in trouble or implicating himself further when he starts to talk. So I agree with you, Old Soul. He's got a problem with thinking and talking. And, it might be tied to, we've heard that he takes some drugs. What was the drug? But he's got like an ADHD thing. So he has trouble controlling his mind. And he takes this drug to control it. But, when you've taken it for 60 years, I'm sure it's worn off a little bit and it's not as powerful as it once was. You're absolutely right, Old Soul. Donald Trump doesn't think when he speaks. And it's proven every time he does and implicates himself or says something wrong or says something stupid. He does it all the time. All right. This next email comes to us from Jace in Texas. We hear from him quite a lot. He says, saw a great article on how Biden is working on negotiating to get some needed pharmaceutical drug prices down for Americans. And he has. We just saw a list yesterday of 10 drugs that they're going to be able to negotiate. What a blessing to have a president working for us and not just the rich among us. Makes me proud to have voted for him, and I'm looking forward to doing so again. So what are the obsessed Hunter Biden laptop clowns in the House doing? MTG said one of the first things Republicans are going to do when they come back in September, work on the spending bill. Nope, they want to vote to impeach Biden. And if any Republican goes against it, they're going to see the old MTG. Like that's any worse than the one we see all the time. Sounds like she's targeting so-called moderates. I thought her boy McCarthy said they are just going to start to so-called investigations or an inquiry. She said that they're going to have a House vote. Bring it. Sounds like he doesn't have control of his clown show, but we all knew that. I hope that monster they created in her turns and eats them alive. Too bad we only have one party working for the people. We are truly seeing the end of my former party, the Republicans, and they can't hide the madness. This will just help Dems in 2024. I'm ready. Will be fun to see the vote fail if they do try. Either way, Republicans lose. Jace from Texas. Now, I've been thinking about this thing, this whole impeachment thing, and I think there's a ploy here by Kevin McCarthy. He's in kind of a tight spot, and he needs a little leverage. I think everybody knows the idea of impeaching Joe Biden is a loser. There's been moderates in the Republican Party that came to the MAGA fucks and the people we're talking about, and Kevin McCarthy had said, you know, don't do this. It's not going to be a good look. It's not going to pass. So now MTG is threatening them. Oh no, I'm sure these other reps who have been in the House of Representatives for years are scared to death of MTG. MTG's never been any weaker than she is now. MAGA hates her. She sided with Kevin McCarthy, and we know he's a weak son of a bitch. So MTG is just trying to bloviate and threaten and try to bully, but she's got nothing, no power to back her up. But let me explain to you what I'm thinking with Kevin McCarthy. Now, the Republicans are coming back from their long summer break, mid-September. And at some point between mid-September and the end of September, they got to come together on their budgets and their appropriations and stuff to get some things passed so the country doesn't shut down. Now, what's important to understand is the country shutting down under these conditions is far different than the debt ceiling issue. I know a lot of people confuse them. It is much different. If the country were to shut down under these circumstances, it's not as devastating as what would have happened with the debt ceiling. That said, it's not a good thing. And to be perfectly honest with you, if they shut down the country, the Republicans will get the blame for it, and it will work against them in the 2024 election. Now, that said, most Republicans, reasonably minded Republicans, don't want the country shut down, but MAGA does, because that's who they are. They're obstructionist, domestic fucking terrorists. They want to cause chaos. They want to cause problems. They want to cause uncertainty. So MAGA is pushing really hard for the Republicans to shut it down. While a lot of the Republicans don't think it's a good idea, and they're right. So Kevin McCarthy, because he's a weak motherfucker, has to decide what to do. He doesn't want to shut down the country, but MAGA wants him to. And of course, we know that MAGA has a anvil hanging over his head, ready to drop anytime he makes the MAGA folks angry. And frankly, I think that's a little bit of a bluff too, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the thing is, Kevin McCarthy has to figure out a way to keep the MAGA fucks at bay so we can keep the country open. So that is why, in my mind, he's agreeing to this impeachment inquiry. He's got to give some red meat to the MAGA fucks and keep them, at bay. And here's the ploy I'm thinking. If you shut down the government, there's a lot of Democrats that are afraid if they do that, that will stop all the court cases and trials and investigations with Donald Trump. They think that's maybe MAGA's ploy to shut everything down that's going against Donald Trump by shutting down the country. Now, I will tell you this. if they shut down the country, it doesn't affect those things at all. It doesn't affect the court cases. It doesn't affect the trials. It doesn't affect any of that. So if they think that's what they're doing, they're wildly stupid, because they should know better than that. However, and this is where Kevin McCarthy is maybe thinking ahead, if they shut down the country, what it will shut down is any congressional investigations into Hunter and Joe Biden. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that ironic? So Kevin McCarthy wants to keep the country open because it's the only sensible thing to do. He wants to keep MAGA happy. So he's going to go to MAGA and say, listen, I know what you want to do. You want to shut down the country. Good idea, man. Good idea. But here's the deal. You also want to impeach Joe Biden. If we shut down the country, all those investigations, all those hearings stop. You really want to do that? You really want to do that? So he's going to try to leverage that situation and get them to vote properly for the to avoid the shutdown, and then leave that bait of impeaching Joe Biden just hanging there. So once they sign on and then get this budget thing fixed, and the government stays open, then they'll have to address impeaching Joe Biden. And then I think it will take a big shit. Then I think Kevin McCarthy at that point will say, yeah, there's not much interest in it, because there isn't. And if there is interest in it, it's not enough to really get it done. They're going to lose. Now, that takes us back to what I was talking about with MAGA. They've got this anvil hanging over the head of Kevin McCarthy. You don't do what we want to do, we're going to drop it on you and kick your ass out. Well, I don't think that's true. And here's why. During the debt ceiling, Kevin McCarthy didn't do what the MAGA people want. If there was ever a time they were going to drop the hammer, drop the anvil, and kick Kevin McCarthy out, it would have been then. But they didn't. Why didn't they? Well, I'll tell you why they didn't. Because MAGA knows they want to kick Kevin McCarthy out, but they'd have to vote on it in the House. They'd need 218 votes ultimately, and they know they can't get it. So right now they've got this threat, this anvil hanging over Kevin McCarthy's head. But once they try it and it doesn't work, they blow their wad and they lose their power. And the same can be said for this impeachment thing. You want to impeach Joe Biden? Go ahead. I fucking dare you, because it won't pass the House, certainly won't pass the Senate, and you all will look much weaker and dumber than you already do. So Kevin McCarthy is playing both sides against each other. He wants to get this budget thing done so we don't shut down the country and have it fuck up the Republicans any more than they're already fucked up going into 2024. But they got to keep the red meat going to the MAGA, because for whatever reason, they keep bowing to MAGA. So they say, you can't do it. You got to vote for it so we can impeach Joe Biden. But once it comes down to that, they won't impeach Joe Biden. They can't win that any more than they can win kicking Kevin McCarthy out. It's just not going to happen. All right. The next email coming from Jeff in Ohio. He says, hey, Mike, the other day I heard your story of the couple in the casino, and you said something that made me realize that Triple D is like the devil. I am a believer. I just try not to push my beliefs onto others. But think about how he has incorporated his worst attributes on the very people who claim to be holy. These people of God say some of the most horrible things about the very people their God has created. They have been a better follower of Triple D than God himself. I truly believe the devil walks the earth and we call him Trump. Now you're probably wondering why he calls him Triple D. I can only assume it's because of the nickname I gave him, Dirty Diaper Donnie. So that would be why it would be Triple D. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Jeff goes on to say, I also believe if we don't control the news sources by forcing them to report the factual news, these confused humans will never be educated. Jeff from Ohio. I agree. We have a lot of problems with our media, with our news sources, and I use that in quotation marks because they really aren't. They really aren't news sources. They're fucking entertainment. They're tabloid. They're scandal sheets. All right. The next one, this one comes from Old Soul again. I always like to hear from Old Soul. She says, hey, Boomer, I just saw your video about Vivek Ramaswamy and how mainstream media is making the same mistakes as they did with Trump in 2015. They're giving a platform to toxicity, ignorance, conspiracy theories, and flat out lies. Have you seen the movie Gremlins? I've seen bits and pieces of it. I was too old when it came out. I'm not one of the Gremlin fans because I never really saw the whole thing. That movie reminds me of Trump and MAGA. The Republican Party fed Trump after midnight and poured water on him. Now we have all these mini Trump gremlins running around, causing all kinds of havoc and chaos. They are destroying everything in their path. We have Gremlin Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tim Scott, George Santos, if that's his real name, we don't know, and Byron Donalds. The list just keeps going on, and we have more gremlins running around than I can count. Ramaswamy is just the latest gremlin Trump popped out. The only thing that took down gremlins in the movie was sunlight, and that's how we'll take down Trump and his gremlins. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Well, we'll just have to keep shining a bright light and exposing them because it doesn't seem like the mainstream media can do it. Thanks, Boomer, Old Soul. Yeah, I did a TikTok about this because I was kind of disturbed by it. Now I'll give you a rundown of what I was thinking when I did this TikTok. I was watching MSNBC and Andrea Mitchell was interviewing Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, Andrea Mitchell is a legend. She's been around for decades. But I got to tell you, she's lost a step or two. She's a little slower. She's not as quick. She's not as clever. She's not as articulate as she once was. I'm not faulting her for that. She's an older woman. But I think she's got to her expiration date. She's done all she can, and she's done a lot. But right now, she's kind of ineffective. So anyway, Vivek Ramaswamy is on the show and she's interviewing him. And Vivek is doing what he does. He talks loud, he talks fast, and he never stops. He talks over people. And Andrea was trying to hit him with some facts or some things that he said or conspiracy theories. And she was asking the right questions, but Vivek did what he does, and he just talks loud, talks fast, and he doesn't stop talking. He overwhelms the interviewer. And so what happens is his message gets out and he doesn't get called out because he's found a way to avoid it. And what I found disconcerting about this was the fact that this reminded me of Donald Trump in 2015. Donald Trump did the very same thing that Ramaswamy is doing now. And it's not surprising. Ramaswamy is like DeSantis, where they tried to be Trump 2 or Trump 3 by saying the same things he said because they found it successful for Donald Trump in 2016 or 15. So that's what he's doing. And my problem with it is he goes on with Andrea Mitchell or whoever the hell else he talks, and he just steamrolls the reporter. So he gets all this information, these conspiracy theories, this bullshit, these lies, and he just gets to do it. And in my mind, at least the left side media should not even deign to put him on the air, because they made this mistake in 2016. They gave Donald Trump a pretty sizable platform when he wasn't really a serious candidate. But because he was on mainstream media so much, he gained a certain amount of credibility or legitimacy. However, ridiculous that sounds, but he did. And I think the left side media is as responsible for Donald Trump becoming president as anybody, because they kept putting him out there. He's good TV. Everybody loves a train wreck. But when Donald Trump did what he did on television, they treated him just like they're treating Ramaswamy. They don't push back. They don't force them to answer questions. They just let them go rogue and do whatever the fuck they want. Well, we know what happened when Donald Trump did that in 2015 and 2016. So why are we going to do it again? Ramaswamy is just another Trump. He's a businessman. He's a charlatan. He's a scammer. He's a shyster, whatever you want to call him. That's what he is. He talks fast. He says a lot of shit, and dumb people will believe it. So why in the world would MSNBC or CNN or any of them do this again? And if they are willing to do it again, we need to do something about it. Like Old Soul said, we need to shine light on everything, expose them for everything. If our media won't push back on them, then we must. I go back to a couple of shows I did with Trumplafucks. Now, I have to say the two Trumplafucks I talked to weren't the sharpest crayons in the box, but not many of them are anyway. But knowing what I know about what the media did with Donald Trump, I wanted to do just the opposite. I wanted to corner these motherfuckers and not let them slip out like our current media allows Ramaswamy and like they did with Donald Trump. We need to expose these people for who they are and not just worry about ratings and let them go rogue and say whatever the fuck he wants on television. So when I was talking to the Trumplafucks, I would say, here's the deal. And they'll say, I don't know anything about that and want to move on to something else. And I'd say, whoa, hold on, just come back. Don't tell me you don't know anything about this, because this is common knowledge. If you don't know the common knowledge, then you're not a very bright person. And then they wouldn't like that because their ego is hurt. Now they'd have to engage. You've got to press these people. You don't get to say whatever you want. And you don't get to talk over these people. I wish I had a chance to talk to the likes of Ben Shapiro, Ramaswamy, or Donald Trump for that matter. I guarantee you, it's not because I'm a brilliant interviewer, but I understand the game they're playing. And if you understand the game they're playing, you play another game that's stronger. You force them into these situations. You don't worry about if they get mad, because they will get mad. You force them into a corner. You make them listen and you make them answer. No diversion, no distraction, no delays. You answer the question. And if they don't answer the question, you embarrass the fuck out of them, which is the last thing they want to do. So what I found so disconcerting in watching this Ramaswamy interview with Andrea Mitchell, it was almost exactly like what we saw with Donald Trump back in 2015 and 2016. They let them get away with everything, and then all of a sudden, dumb people look at these idiots and think they're heroes. We can't allow that to happen this year. I mean, there is no reason to put Ramaswamy on television. He's polling at like 2 or 3%. He may be starting to beat Ron DeSantis in some areas, but that's going to be short-lived. Ron DeSantis is dropping like a rock. He's still 50 points behind Donald Trump. He's not a factor. He's not a real candidate. So I'm having problems with the mainstream media trying to make him a credible candidate. We don't need a guy like this. He's Donald Trump, but he's 37 years old. He's a little more intelligent, a little more accomplished, and a little more articulate. That makes him all the more dangerous, and we've got to fucking stop that. I don't know that we can complain to the mainstream media, because they're just going to do whatever they got to do to get ratings. They don't care how it affects the country. But you need to know, and you need to understand that what's going on when this guy comes on, or anybody else like him comes on, Ron DeSantis, because he doesn't answer questions either. It's all bullshit. You can't listen to it. There's nothing to it. and you've got to push back at every chance you get. I only hope our mainstream media has learned a lesson and will do that ultimately, but I'm not convinced that they have that capability. We don't want to do Donald Trump again. We don't want to have a Donald Trump 2. We saw what Donald Trump 1 did to this country, and it's going to take a long time to recover from it. So let's not fucking do this again. Ramaswamy is a stupid piece of shit. He has no clue what he's doing or what he's talking about. He's all about conspiracy theories, lying, and bullshit. They asked him what would he have done if he were Mike Pence and the vice president. And, he said, well, what I would have done is I wouldn't have cleared the Electoral College, and then we would have had a vote in Congress to do this, and then we would redo the vote. This motherfucker doesn't even know that that would have taken weeks to get done. He just spews shit out. He's like Donald Trump in that sense. Anything that comes in his mind comes out of his mouth, and it isn't worth shit. Be wary of people like Donald Trump. Be wary of people like Vivek Ramaswamy, whether it be in politicians, in your neighbors, in your coworkers, whoever. These people are all over the place, and they get by with a lot, at least for a time. And it's because we allow them to do that. We need to shut these motherfuckers down because they are fucking dangerous. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Well, when I read this next story, I found it pretty disconcerting, almost a little scary. With more than a year to go before the 2024 election, a constellation of conservative organizations is preparing for a possible second White House term for Donald Trump, and they are recruiting thousands of Americans to come to Washington on a mission to dismantle the federal government and replace it with a vision closer to his own. People are planning this. I mean, this tells you how important it is to keep Donald Trump away from the White House. Now, led by the long-established Heritage Foundation think tank and fueled by former Trump administration officials, the far-reaching effort is essentially a government in waiting for the former president's second term, or any candidate who aligns with their ideals and can defeat President Joe Biden in 2024. Now, with a nearly 1,000-page Project 2025 handbook and an army of Americans, the idea is to have a civic infrastructure in place on day one to commandeer, reshape, and do away with what Republicans deride as the deep state bureaucracy, in part by firing as many as 50,000 federal workers. Sounds pretty draconian, doesn't it? We need to flood the zone with conservatives, said Paul Dans, director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project and a former Trump administration official who speaks with historical flourish about the undertaking. He says, this is a clarion call to come to Washington, he said. People need to lay down their tools and step aside from their professional life and say, this is my lifetime moment to serve. Now, the unprecedented effort is being orchestrated with dozens of right-flanked organizations, many new to Washington, and represents a changed approach from the conservatives who traditionally have sought to limit the federal government by cutting federal taxes and slashing federal spending. Now, instead, Trump-era conservatives want to gut the administrative state from within by ousting federal employees they believe are standing in their way and in the way of the president's agenda, and replacing them with like-minded officials more eager to fulfill a new executive's approach to governing. The goal is to avoid the pitfalls of Trump's first years in office, when the Republican president's team was ill-prepared, his cabinet nominees had trouble winning Senate confirmation, and policies were met with resistance by lawmakers, government workers, even Trump's own appointees, who refused to bend or break protocol, or in some cases violate laws to achieve goals. While many of the Project 2025 proposals are inspired by Trump, they are being echoed by GOP rivals Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, and they are gaining prominence among other Republicans. And if Trump wins a second term, the work from the Heritage Coalition ensures the president will have the personnel to carry forward his unfinished White House business. The president, day one, will be a wrecking ball for the administrative state, said Russ Vought, a former Trump administration official involved in the effort, who is now president at the Conservative Center for Renewing America. This is pretty frightening. Now, the good news is there's no way Donald Trump or any other Republican wins the 2024 election, so this will go by the wayside. But the fact that we have groups of people, conservatives or whoever, are planning to completely remake our government is a little frightening. And it should be frightening enough that those people who are Democrats will decide to get out and vote en masse. We can't allow something like this to happen. It's just not an option. We can't do it. So I read this and I'm thinking to myself, wow, how could they even comprehend this? But they don't like what's going on now. They don't like our government. They don't like helping the people of this country. We've seen that. So now they want to change everything. I'd be surprised if there are all Republicans would get on board with this. I mean, there are some reasonably minded Republicans. Do they want to get on board with such a thing? I highly doubt it. And again, it's a scary situation, but I don't want you to get too worried about it because the likelihood of them being able to do anything is almost zero. There's no way Donald Trump wins the presidency. There's no way any other Republican wins it. Vivek Ramaswamy, not going to win it. Ron DeSantis, not going to win it. Anybody else probably isn't going to jump on board with this shit because it's batshit crazy. And it's counterproductive to this country and what the Constitution says. But that's who we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who want to overturn the government and throw away the Constitution. If you feel good about that, then vote for Donald Trump. But if you feel that way, you don't belong in this fucking country. And when Donald Trump doesn't win, maybe we should throw your fucking ass out. All right. Fani Willis. I think Fani Willis's motto is go big or go home. I love Fani Willis because she's a strong woman. She says what she means and she doesn't back down. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis made a stunning request yesterday by asking the court in Georgia fake electors case to allow her to try all 19 co-defendants, all 19, including Donald Trump, starting October 23rd. That's 2 months away. That would be fucking awesome. It's not likely to happen, but but by saying that, that's got Donnie probably going through tons and tons of diapers and getting carpal tunnel from typing shit on Truth Social. Now, to date, only attorneys Kenneth Cheesebro and Sidney Powell have asked for speedy trials. However, Willis wrote in a document filed Tuesday that separating the defendants would be improper. MSNBC's Ali Velshi asked legal analyst Glenn Kirshner, what is the basis of arguing that severance in a case like this is improper? Well, it's a RICO case, and that's why there were a bunch of people indicted. Glenn Kirshner, I trust his knowledge on things like this. He says, so Ali, anytime we indict a co-defendant case, the prosecutors have a keen interest in keeping all defendants in the same trial. The defendants ordinarily have a keen interest to try to get themselves removed from or severed out of the joint trial. Why is that? Because anytime co-defendants are tried separate from their fellow co-defendants, and I have had this happen many times as a prosecutor, they will make what they call the empty chair defense. Kirshner continued. He said, so I can almost promise you that one of, for example, defendant Cheesebro's defenses, if he's sitting there either alone or maybe with Sidney Powell and one or two other co-conspirators, charged co-defendants, I can almost see them saying, you know what? John Eastman, the constitutional scholar, the law school dean, who should be sitting in that empty chair right here, but he's not. He is the true architect behind the alternate electors scheme because he assured me there was legal support. Now, Kirshner said a defense could lead to at least one juror finding reasonable doubt, leading to a hung jury. Now, earlier in the segment, Kirshner predicted a chorus of voices from many of the co-defendants will say there's no way they can prepare for a trial by October 23rd. Yeah, we've got 3 or 4 of them that want speedy trials, but the rest are going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Put the brakes on. We can't do that. Donald Trump being foremost among them. Donald Trump doesn't want a quick case. He's all about delaying, and he's going to want to delay it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. We've got people who want a speedy trial. We've got other people that want to extend it forever. That's not going to happen. So I would presume that the judge has to come up with some kind of compromise. Now, Fani said, how about October? I don't think Fani Willis even believes she's going to get that date. But she made a big time call, and that's going to probably ultimately get the judge to settle on something that's sooner than later. You see what I mean? Ask for the world, but accept half of it. And that's probably what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to see if they allow these people to separate, or if Fani Willis can do what she wants to do and try them all. And if she does that, I would suspect that it's not going to be October. It's not going to be 2026. It's more likely to be the spring again of 2024. But we'll see what's going to happen. Kirshner went on to say it will be really interesting now to see what Judge Scott McAfee does now that Fani Willis is prepared to give everyone their speedy trial, Kirshner said. I think a lot of them expected Fani Willis to say, oh, no, I can't start that quick. We need this or that. Because originally she came out and said, how about March? And I think she was just trying to be as reasonable as she could. But when they said, no, we want a speedy trial. Well, not March. Okay, how about October? And then how about everybody in October? As I say, it's not going to be October. I'd be really surprised if it was. I mean, if it is, that'd be pretty fucking cool. But I don't think that's the way it's going to go. What I'm more interested in finding out is if they are going to make every effort to keep all these co-defendants together and try them all together. I think that's going to be interesting. I think that's the most effective way. As I understand it, Fani Willis wants to do that. So in the trial, the jury's got the full scope of what went on in this crime because it was far-reaching. It was a conspiracy. It was a team effort. And they need to see all the aspects, all the moving parts from this team. So this is going to be very interesting. But like Jack Smith, I don't worry when Fani Willis is there. She's a tough cookie. She knows her shit. She's already set some traps for these fucks. And I think it's going to end up the way she wants it. It's just not going to be October 23rd. Now, we've got, we had the debates. Donald Trump skipped them. The debate was pretty uneventful. Donald Trump's interview with Tucker Carlson was a bust. It was a joke. The whole thing was a lost opportunity for the Republican Party, and they know it. Now, though he skipped the first Republican primary debate on Fox News and has called the network hostile to him, Donald Trump still watches the channel. As the former president does from time to time, on Tuesday, he reacted angrily to a Fox program, this time in the form of America Reports. Now, GOP presidential candidate Chris Christie appeared on the show and was asked about a federal judge setting the trial date for March 4th for Trump, who was indicted in Washington, D.C. over his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. Chris Christie said Judge Tanya Chutkin, who is an Obama appointee, said, "We're going to the courtroom on the 4th of March, a day before Super Tuesday." Supporters of former President Trump are looking at this saying that timeline seems to be clearly designed to interfere with the primary process. What do you say? Chris Christie goes on to say, what interferes with the primary process is Donald Trump's conduct and his insistence on continuing to run for president of the United States, despite the fact he's been indicted in 4 different jurisdictions and he's out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions in this country. Whether you believe the charges or just or not, they are here. Now, Christie went on to tout his credentials and argued Trump can't beat Joe Biden. Well, I mean, he's still the front runner by a long shot, Roberts said. He dropped a little after the first debate, but still has a leg up on everybody else. We'll see how this continues to go. Now, right after that, Trump fired off 2 posts on his Truth Social platform, one directed at each man in the exchange. First one said, sloppy Chris Christie, who was rated the worst governor in the history of New Jersey, had the lowest approval rating, 8%, and 11 straight downgrades for New Jersey bonds and a record, and was thrown out of New Hampshire after his last debate and endlessly suffered from the horrible and never-ending Bridgegate scandal. He should drop out of the race. He is going nowhere, and he's very bad for the Republican Party. See what I mean? He doesn't even think about it. He just spews shit. Then he went after Roberts. He said, would somebody please tell Rhino John Roberts of Fox News that my poll numbers went up after the last debate? They didn't go slightly down. I'm leading DeSanctimonious by more than 50 points and crooked Joe Biden by a lot. Make America great again. Well, of course, Donnie Trump is lying. He's not leading Joe Biden. He is leading Ron DeSantis, but given who Ron DeSantis is and how awkward and weird he is, I think anybody could probably beat him. I'm surprised by now that one of the other candidates isn't roaring past him. It's interesting. Donald Trump made a prediction. He said he heard some scuttlebutt around Ron DeSantis. And he exposed how stupid he was too. He said that he had heard that Ron DeSantis is going to drop out of the presidential race and then run for the Senate in Florida in a primary against Rick Scott. Well, that's not a crazy idea because you see, Ron DeSantis can't run for governor again, according to the law in Florida. Now, we know Florida is fully capable of changing the laws to help out Ron DeSantis, but Ron DeSantis' stock has kind of fallen quite a lot. So it would make sense if he's come to the realization that he can't win the presidency, that he's going to run for Senate. That will be interesting. And I hope he does, because then Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott can beat the shit out of each other while the Democratic candidate has a better shot. I don't know if a Democrat can win in the state of Florida for a Senate seat, but if there was ever a time that they could, it would be now. With how bad things are in the state of Florida, with the things that Rick Scott has said, let's get rid of Medicare, let's get rid of Social Security. Florida has a lot of elderly folks in their state. If that's made apparent to them, I can't imagine they would vote for Rick Scott or Ron DeSantis. It's pretty interesting what's going on with him, because it's really he's really in a bad situation. He's not going to be able to do much of anything. Frankly, I think that Ron DeSantis's political career is pretty much done. You can't take a state like Florida, which is a beautiful state, has great people in it, and do the things he's done to it and still expect to be elected to anything. I mean, inflation is high around the country, but it's highest in Florida because of Ron DeSantis. We've got a hurricane barreling into, or will have gone through there by the time you hear this podcast. Yet people in that state can't afford or just can't get any kind of home insurance, homeowners insurance. So what's going to happen after the fact? You get a hurricane, a Cat 4 come through Florida, devastate people, destroy houses, displace people, injure people, even kill people. And then when it's over, what are you left with? You are left with destroyed property and no insurance to cover it. So what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is Ron DeSantis is going on bended knee to Joe Biden for the federal government to help out the people of Florida, so Ron DeSantis doesn't look any worse than he already does. And you know what? Joe Biden will do it because he's a president for all people instead of just one party. Now, if Ron DeSantis was the president and it happened to be a blue state, what do you think he'd do? Same thing Donald Trump did. Ignore the blue states because they didn't vote for him. That's not a president. That's a dictator. That is a piece of shit. And whether it be Ron DeSantis, Ramaswamy, or Donald Trump, they're all going to behave the same way. So if you live in Florida and you're dealing with the aftermath of this latest hurricane and you need help, understand where you're getting that help from. Not the Republicans. In fact, they'd probably vote against giving you help. Your own people, your own representatives would vote against you. The people that will help you are the Democrats. So when election time comes along, you remember that. Because if you elect them again, there's going to come another time when they have more power and you are going to be left twisting in the fucking wind. All right. Judge Robert McBurney ruled that the report that was produced by a special grand jury that led to the eventual indictment of former President Donald Trump must be released to the public. He had previously blocked the release. You'll remember this. This is the Georgia case. This is a special grand jury case. Reporters and other people wanted that report that suggested Donald Trump and all these other fucks be indicted. They wanted it released. Fani Willis said to the judge, "You can't do that. That's going to put other people in danger, the witnesses and that sort of thing." So it wasn't released that first time, but now it looks like it will. And it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of information that we don't already know that's going to blow this up even bigger. I'd be interested to find out how Fani Willis feels about it now that the indictments have been revealed. Will she still be as worried about this being released, or is she all for it at this point? I have a feeling it's not as big a deal to her now as it once was. But still, it's going to expose some names and situations that might put other people in danger. So that's going to be something we need to watch. Now, in the ruling, McBurney said that it would be released on September 9th. So we're talking about 10, 11 days. He said, after considering the well-reasoned positions of both the district attorney's office and the media interveners, the undersigned in the order dated 13 February 2023 concluded that much of the final report should not be disclosed until such a date as the district attorney completed her investigation, the ruling explained, and clearly she has completed her investigation. Much has changed since that February order was entered. As anyone with an internet connection now knows, the district attorney has indicted 19 individuals for their alleged participation in a racketeering enterprise purportedly designed to interfere with the lawful administration of the 2020 general election in Georgia. This exceedingly private development eliminates the due process concerns that animated the February order, at least for any of the 19 indictees. who might have been named in the special purpose grand jury's final report. Consequently, the undersigned now intends to release the remaining portions of that report, just as the special purpose grand jury requested and as the Code of Georgia requires. So that report is going to be released on September 9th, and it's going to reveal some interesting information. Hopefully nobody gets hurt or there are no problems from it, but not only is the media going to find out, we will all find out. And remember when I told you that when these court cases start, I think we're going to find evidence that is revealed that are things we never thought of, that we never imagined, and they aren't going to be good. So when they release this report on September 9th, we might start to see some of those surprising things. All right, a New York Supreme Court judge on Tuesday ruled that banks and insurance companies cannot conceal documents in connection with a lawsuit that alleges the Trump organization inflated assets. We're talking about Letitia James, the New York AG, and her fraud case against Donald Trump and his family. And this lawsuit comes out to the tune of $250 million at minimum. Now, Donald Trump, of course, Donald Trump, the insurance companies and the banks wanted to hide these documents. This Supreme Court judge says, nah, you can't. So a lot of information is going to come out of that as well. Judge Arthur Engoron's ruling follows efforts by several firms to hide documents that show how they unwittingly became part of an alleged scheme, the report said. Now the question is, were they really unwittingly? But even if they were unwittingly scammed by Donald Trump, that's still not a good thing. They maybe aren't culpable for crimes. But if you're going to put your money in a bank or sign on with an insurance company, are you going to sign on one that has been fooled by the likes of Donald Trump? That's not going to be good for the reputation. And now they don't have a fucking choice in the matter. They have to reveal all this stuff. Now, the records are central to New York State Attorney General Letitia James' $250 million lawsuit against the Trumps that alleges the estate mogul and the family members he made executives got away with minimal scrutiny. Jose Pagliari writes for the Daily Beast, the former president is just 34 days away from heading to civil trial in New York City, where his personal finances will be put under a microscope while the state's AG tries to bleed his corporation dry over the way it routinely overstated its holdings on official documents. Talked about this before. Well, Donald Trump's got all kinds of criminal trials coming up. The one that might take his knees out is the one in New York with Attorney General Letitia James. It's not a criminal case. It is a civil case. And that starts October 2nd. We're sitting here at August 30th. We're just over a month before this case starts. And when we're talking about $250 million minimum in this lawsuit, not to mention the fact if she wins the lawsuit, Donald Trump and his family will no longer be able to do business in New York. And when they take all this money, Donald Trump better hope he has the cash to pay it off, because if he doesn't, they're going to go after his property, Mar-a-Lago, Trump Tower, what have you. Now, Zurich American Insurance Company, WSFS Bank, Ladder Capital are among the companies who asked the judge to seal the documents. Pagliari notes that Zurich, for its part, claimed some documents which had already made their way to the court docket as evidence contain highly sensitive, non-public, proprietary information about Zurich's insurance business, including Zurich, I'm not sure, highly protected underwriting guidelines and competitively sensitive financial information. Well, That's going to be interesting. So there's a lot of things that are going to be revealed. All things that Donald Trump does not want revealed. He's afraid for them to be revealed. And these banks and insurance companies don't want them revealed. And it's not about proprietary secrets that they have. It's about the embarrassment of either being scammed by Donald Trump or being culpable with Donald Trump in these crimes. It does expose them to a lot. Donald Trump got away with a lot. And while it's not a criminal trial, Letitia James may be the first knockout blow for Donald Trump. It won't send him to jail, but it may destroy him financially, even more so than he already is. Like I say, he may be made to pay $250 million minimum. And he's not going to be able to do that. I heard somebody talking now that was trying to get an idea what Donald Trump was worth right now. He's always told us he's a billionaire, but with all that's gone on and how he's bleeding money, hemorrhaging money, some people are suggesting that his wealth is at $30 million. Now, that's a lot of money to you and I. But when you've just spent $40 million in legal fees in the first 6 months of this year, that ain't going to last long. So he's going to have to get to grifting. And then if Letitia James sues him and wins and gets $250 million, well, Donnie Trump is fucking done. Because like I say, if he doesn't have the money, and he doesn't, then they're going to start taking his shit, his plane, his homes, his buildings, whatever it takes to cover that $250 million. Again, that's minimum. It could be 300, it could be 500 million after it's all said and done. But you see, even though this isn't a criminal case, this is the one that could kneecap Donald Trump. And the best part of it, it's coming October 2nd of this year. Little over a month away. The demise of Donald Trump is coming, even more so than we're seeing right now. He's going down. There is no question about it. I know there are people out there that still worry about Donald Trump becoming president again. I keep telling you that that's not the case, that that's not happening. With 91 felony charges against him and 2 DAs that have a conviction rate of 99%, no way Donald Trump runs the table, and there's no way he doesn't get multiple charges, convictions. And all he needs is 1 or 2 to take him out of the equation and put him away for life. He's an old man. He isn't going to last very long in jail. And then just as a cherry on top, we have this civil case with Letitia James in New York. It's not $5 million here, $10 million there, $250 million minimum. Donald Trump loses that case, he's fucking done financially, business-wise. He's done. And when he's drained of all his money, how is he going to protect himself in all his other criminal cases? But beyond that, if he can't pay for his legal fees for his criminal cases, then how's he going to get the money to run for president? You see, all of this avalanche is coming down on Donald Trump, and whether he's in jail or not, the logistics won't be possible for him to run for president or certainly become the nominee. So we got a lot to look forward to. A lot of shit is happening, and it's happening soon. So all these years of saying nothing will happen to Donald Trump, well, shit's already happening to Donald Trump, and it's going to get worse over the next month. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.